And this is the,
Okay, we're back.
okay. And so this is the text that you're going to use, and you're going to replace pieces of it and then save it as an HTML file. I think that's how we did it. So John, you're looking at what we have here, right?
Yeah, I'm getting it. Because it's RTF, I have to convert it to text. So to do that, I have to open up in Word and then save it as text. So it's taking, my Word takes a while to load. So,
Okay.
so it's bouncing around right now. So it'll take
Okay, here we go. There we go. Well, you guys are getting a little lesson in some other stuff that you didn't. So I'm getting this into a Word document and pasting the code in there. Then I'm saving as
text.
Text, and well, docx, and this is you want it to be docx or text?
And you save it as a text file.
Okay, plain text, txt, save, and this is let's see, okay, and save as, let's see, activity, and then I'm going to save that, and then okay, and
Okay, I got the file. Let's see here.
so do you need this file?
I just need the HTML one is text, so my Word is very slow.
Okay.
I'm waiting to be able to save it. Here we go. It's coming up.
Is there a fast way of sending this to you rather than going into email? And
yeah, posting it in the chat, but that's okay. I can do that.
does it post it as a file or as a raw text in chat?
Well, .txt, but I've got it now. Let me.
Okay.
You could do both, Beth. Just so you know, you could copy and paste it, or you could attach a file in chat. Either way.
Chat will take any kind of file.
Well, this is something that we had in a common place where all the students could get at it. And so that they could.
Well, all the students here can get at it in chat, but we would have to put it in Canvas for them to get it if they're not here. So.
Well, let's put it in Canvas then. So over to dashboard and to save as to where the desktop and save and here we're going to go to and go to what week is this? It's on module here, and we're going to go down to right here, and we're going to add a file, new file, choose file, there's desktop.
Okay, Beth, do you want me to share my screen with this?
I'm just putting the file here so that everybody can get at it. And I'm going to edit just a smidge here, just a teensy smidge. Okay. And This should be, everybody should be able to get at this in their module. Let me just check and see. And you can download it or so.
Okay, in the meantime, I will put, for the students that are right here right now, I'll stick it in chat so they can grab it and work along.
Okay.
So there's a file called beth.html. Oh, I accidentally privately shared it. Let me share it to everybody. Okay, there's a file called beth.html in the chat, and that's a text file. A .html file is, in fact, just another version of a text file. So when you're publishing a web page, it has to have a .html extension. And again, HTML is a text file, but it's a special kind of text file. You're indicating that it is a web page, but it's also plain text. So that's what .html means. You could also save it as .htm. Either will work fine, but it has to be one of the two.
I don't see it.
It's in the chat. Everybody should see it. I see it.
I don't.
Does anybody else not see it?
The chat. And there it is.
We got it fine. Downloaded it,
There
opened
is.
it.
Okay,
Right
good.
there in the chat.
Beth,
I don't-
HTML. Zach from John at 1234.
Nope.
No? Huh.
You don't see it. Why don't you somehow refresh your, it's there. So maybe you need to scroll down or something, but it's, everybody should see it. I see it. It's in the chat for everybody available. So do you see anything in chat?
No, I don't.
Oh,
How about if I type hello? Do you see that in chat?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Do you see the file right above it?
No, I don't. I think I
All
might
right.
have. I think I might have
I'll
cut
just
out.
I'll re-upload it for you. Okay. So I'll just put it in there. Okay. So I've just put it in chat again. Do you see it now?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, I guess you'll just have to follow along because it's there twice. Does everybody else see it?
yeah, I see both postings.
Okay.
I see it.
All right.
If you look up on my screen, I'm still sharing, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you are. Do you want me to share
Yeah, so
now?
I pulled the chat up in the middle of the screen so you could see it. And this is where chat is, over here with more and chat right there like that.
I think we can only see your desktop, not your Zoom option.
Oh, okay.
So when you're
I
not
can't see
sharing,
everything on my, not
when you're
everything
not-
on my desk.
when you're not sharing, you can use the functionality of Zoom and chat, or maybe you can as an administrator right now, but we can't see it.
Okay, so I have to stop my share in order to
I believe so.
Yeah, that might be true.
go leave the meeting.
I haven't used the
Yeah.
admin version, but I think that's right. That's how most of these other video conferencing apps work.
So I can share my screen, Beth. Why don't I do that?
Okay, you share your screen. Not everybody may have Text Wrangler either, so that's the other thing that is handy.
Okay.
with it.
Okay, so I should be sharing my screen now. I have this file called beth.html on my desktop. Now, when you have a .html file, if you double click on it, it can either open up in a web browser or a text editor. It will probably try to open up in a web browser. So if I double click on this, which I just did, it opens itself up in a web page because it's .html. So this is what it looks when it's rendered in a browser. Let me just make that a little smaller. Now in a text editor, And I'm going to use a text editor called Brackets, which is similar to Text Wrangler or BBEdit. There are a number of plain text editors out there. The reason I'm using Brackets is I usually use Text Wrangler. I really like Text Wrangler, but I've noticed that in Text Wrangler, if I try to make my type look as big as this, it crashes in Zoom when it's being shared. So it's a very odd, weird bug, and Text Wrangler and Zoom don't play well together. So this is a different program other than Text Wrangler, but it doesn't really matter as long as you have a text editor that you can open up this file in. Now, a text editor is not a word processor. It's a lot less powerful than a word processor. And in the case of doing web coding, you really don't want a program like Microsoft Word or any high-powered word processing program, because it's kind of like lighting a cigarette with a blowtorch. You can do it, but it doesn't work very well. So text editors are much less capable than than word processors. Text editors don't focus on formatting; they just focus on the text itself, which is of course what you want, because in HTML and CSS, it's the CSS or the cascading style sheets that actually does the styling. And HTML hypertext markup language just is plain text that is the structure or the content without regard to styling. So the essential difference between web and print is that web is kind of split in half. Print is unified. So a print file is both content and presentation at the same time. There is no difference between the content and the presentation. You give somebody a piece of paper, it is both the content that's printed on the paper as well as the presentation of what it looks like visually on the page. But with web design, the content is actually split from the presentation. So a central concept in web design is what we call the separation of content and presentation. Now, presentation is generally thought of as visual, although there are other ways to present content other than visually. Words can be spoken aloud, for example, or displayed in Braille, something like that. But generally, when we talk about presentation, we're talking about visual presentation. And both print and web are primarily visual media. So the same design principles apply in the visual web page as well as visual print. But there are some essential differences, as I mentioned. Now here you see on the right actual HTML code. And here you see on the left what that code is rendered like in a web browser. So here's an example of the content on the right and the presentation of the content on the left. So you see right off the bat, it's the same document we're looking at. It's the exact same document. I've opened one up in a web browser. I've opened another up in a text editor. So you can see visually that contrast between what we're calling content and presentation. The presentation has all the styling, the bolds, the red, the flush left, the white background, and so forth. On the right, the code is merely code. And it's got instructions for the web browser to display the styles, because there's in effect what we would call something like a style sheet. The concept of a style sheet is the same whether you're talking about web or print. It is a set of instructions on how the material should be presented. So one of the things we see on the right in the actual code is you see a lot of things enclosed in angle brackets. So you see the angle bracket around HTML, you see this angle bracket around head. So the left and right angle brackets, they indicate that what's between the two is HTML code. If something is not between the angle brackets, it's the content and not the code. So the first on this page, as we go along here, we get all the way up to here, and everything up to there is code. Everything that you see here is that highlighted is enclosed in the angle brackets. But then you see my first page. That's the first thing you see that is not enclosed in angle brackets. And then we see lots of stuff enclosed in angle brackets until we get all the way up to here. And then you see this is my first HTML page, right? And you see that here, this is my first HTML page. So you can see that anything in the angle brackets does not show up on the page. It's invisible to the page. Anything that's not in the angle brackets generally is your content, which does show up on the page. So the code has a lot of stuff here that is not showing up on the page, because most of this is code that is instructions on what to do with the content. So far, so good? Okay, now,
I didn't hear anybody say anything. Do they know that they're going
course
to
we're
change this
good.
to make it?
this first piece of code here is very long and complex looking, and that's what we call a doc type. A doc type is short for document type definition or document type declaration. And a doc type just says what version of HTML we're using. That's all it says. So that's actually kind of its own little thing. It's not really HTML code. It's just something that's at the beginning of every HTML document that just says we're publishing according to, in this case, the HTML 401 transitional standard. The current standard, this document was probably written some years ago. The current standard is what we call HTML5, and the HTML5 doc type is much shorter and different looking. But there are a variety of HTML standards, and this very first piece of code does nothing more than indicate which standard we're using. So don't get to that. That's a little bizarre looking. You don't have to understand that. All that means to you is, oh, it's an HTML4 document. Okay. The real code starts here where it says HTML. And HTML documents always have two parts: the head section, which is highlighted, and then the body section, which is highlighted. The head section is what we call metadata, which is information about the document, but it is not the information that we are publishing. The body section is the data, which is what we're actually publishing and communicating to the world. Okay, so the head section's metadata, information about the document. The body section is the data that we're publishing. It is the document. And you can see the pattern here, hopefully, that HTML has beginning and ending tags. So you see here where it has body and slash body. This means here's the beginning of the body, and then you have all the stuff in the body, and then this means the body is over. And that's the same pattern here. And let me expand that again. That's the same pattern here. This means this is the beginning of the head section, and the slash head means that's the end of the head section. And everything between the two is what we call the head section or the metadata. Here, everything between body and slash body is the data. And HTML starts here, which is the whole document, and ends here. So the whole thing is within what we call an HTML section. So that's your basic structure of a document. It's easier to start with the body. The body is what we're publishing. So let's look at these codes. H4 is a type of headline. It is a less important headline. It's not an H1, which would be the most important headline, or an H2 or an H3. But we got primary, secondary, tertiary. I don't know what the term is for the fourth most important. But anyway, it's a quadriary. I don't know. But this document actually is not technically correct in that you would generally not start with an H4. You would generally start with an H1. It's kind of like you're publishing a flyer and you've removed the three most important headlines, and now you're down to a headline that's less important than a tertiary headline. So starting with an H4 is generally not done, but that's what's here, right? But it is a heading tag, and it ends here. And then we have a P, which means paragraph starts here. And then we have a slash P, which means paragraph ends here. Then we have another P that means paragraph starts here, and a slash P that means paragraph ends here. But within this paragraph opening tag, we see some more complications. Class equals style 2. That refers to the fact that this paragraph should be styled in a different way than other paragraphs, and it should be styled according to what's defined as style 2. Style 2 is listed in the head section, which is our metadata section. Again, here's our head section. This is where styling occurs. And style 2 is defined here. And that weird looking piece of code says basically this. It should be red text. That's what it says. That's what that line of code says, red text. So what we're saying is anything with what's called a class of style 2, which is the paragraph here, should have a font color of red. And FF0000 is what we call hexadecimal code for red. And it's actually in RGB format. You remember RGB stands for?
Red, green, and blue.
Red, green, blue, which is the model of color we use on the web, unlike print, where we use CMYK, where we define colors as different values of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. On the web or any screen media, since we're dealing with light and not ink, we're dealing with pixel color, we're saying that the red value is FF, the green value is 00, and the blue value is 00. And because it's what we call hexadecimal code, which is base 16, base 9 is digits 0 through 9, which is 10 unique digits. Base 16 is 0 through F, which is 16 unique digits. After 9 numerals of 0 through 9, we've run out of numbers. So then we start using letters A, B, C, D, E, and F. So in base 10, what we're used to is 9 is the highest possible value for one numerical character, and 0 is the lowest possible value. But in base 16, F is the highest possible value with one character, and 0 is the lowest possible value. And in hexadecimal color coding, we use 2 digits for the red, green, and blue value. So FF is a solid red. It's the highest possible value of red is FF. The lowest possible value of green is 00, and the lowest possible value of blue is 00. So this is what we call pure red. There's no green, there's no blue, there's only red, and it's the highest possible value. Therefore, it's a pure red. So what that line of code says is, make it a red. Make the text red. Now, here's a paragraph where we're saying, oh, no, this paragraph takes a different style. We're calling this style 1. Style 1 is defined here. Style 1 is not dealing with color, it's dealing with the font family. It's saying that style 1 should be in Verdana. But here we have what's called a cascade. Oh, it should be in Verdana. But if Verdana is not available, meaning it's not installed in the user's computer, which you don't control, then fall back to Trebuchet. Oh, but if that's not available, fall back to whatever the default sans serif type is as indicated in browser defaults. So what we're basically saying in style 1 is that this is a sans serif font, and specifically we want Verdana, but we have fallback options if that font is not available. And we see here that the font is available because that looks like Verdana. Okay? So there's your anatomy of code. This is a kind of a bizarre paragraph. It's a paragraph with nothing in it because that ampersand NBSP semicolon is a fancy way of saying that's a space. So there's literally a paragraph with a space in it and nothing else. So that's kind of nothing, but it's there. You don't see it because it's a space. Okay, now here, this paragraph is what you see down here. And this is a perfect example of a bad example of what we call click here text, which is generally avoided these days. But that's what it says. It says clicking here will link to Adobe's web page. Now, why is that not a good thing to do? I'm sure it will work. If I click there, the link isn't bad. It does go to Adobe's page, and that's great. But Adobe's web page should be the link text and not click here. And the reason for that is accessibility, which has become more important over time. Because if a blind person were listening to their screen reader software that would read this page aloud to them as they tried to surf the web without being able to see, they would say to their software, tell me what the links are. I want to know what the links are on this page, right? And they would hear the words, clicking here. And that would not help them very much. But if the link was Adobe's web page, instead, they would hear Adobe's web page. So you see why click here text should never be used as link text. Now, this is extremely common. By the way, the Cabrillo site, most websites are littered with click here links. They're all over the web. But they are, huh?
It's old-fashioned.
But it's old-fashioned. And it is old-fashioned exactly because it goes back to the earliest days of the web in the early 90s. It's all second nature to us now. But when the web came out, you had to tell people what to do. It's like, oh, if you see text that's blue with a line under it, what that means is click on it. Nobody knew that in the early 90s. So you literally had to say, click here, right? That's where that comes from. It's a holdover. Now, these days, everybody knows what a link is when you look at a web page. You know it's second nature. You click on it, right? But again, when the web first came out, you had to tell people that's what they did with link text. And so click here was extremely common. And so that's a carryover. People that learned how to code in the very beginning, they did a lot of click here. But today with the web, we generally, we frown upon that. In fact, that violates Section 508 accessibility guidelines. So that's your brief anatomy of this web page. Now, you can edit this by simply changing some text and then looking at it in a web browser. So as I said, I'm looking at the exact same file in two different windows. I'm looking at my web browser window and I'm looking at my text window. Yeah.
What, John, can you
Yes.
hear me? Oh, what I'd like for them to do is to see all of the colors, to go to someplace online and look at those.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to open up a web page here.
Color that they like.
There are lots of things online called color pickers. And I'm just going to say HTML color picker. And we'll get lots of things come up.
Just HTML color pickers, yeah.
Yeah, so there are lots of HTML color pickers. They generally look, a little like this, where, if I move my mouse over a color or click on it, it shows me that this shade of blue is 99CCFF according to hexadecimal code. Again, the 99 is the red value, that's fairly high. The CC is the green value, and that's a little lower, and the FF is super high blue, so it's a lot of blue, and you can see it is primarily a blue with tinges of red and green. A little more red than green. So that's what again, the 6-digit hex codes are really just pairs of RGB values. And that is how we define color in RGB on the web. There are other models to define RGB values used in web design, such as values of 0 through 255 for each of the values, or percentages like 100% red, 0% green, 0% blue. Or the hex code, or there's a limited number of English words like red, green, blue, purple, black, white that you can use. But in general, the hex code system gives you the most options you can describe to millions of color differences, any color online with red, green, blue values in 6-digit hex code. So the hex code, the hexadecimal code, is the standard. And here you see the other models. This model says 153, 204, 255 for the red, green, blue value, right? Instead of 99CCFF. This value is in percentages, 100%, 80%, and the 210 refers to out of 256. So that's little different there. They've thrown a twist in there. So, so this is an example of a color picker. Is that helpful, Beth?
Yes, because they're going to be picking a color to put in the code that they like. So they need to know where the color pickers are, and that they're going to be changing their code, their hex code. So,
right. So, yeah. So if you Google color picker or HTML color picker, you'll get a variety of sites which give you all kinds of different ways to find a color. And
Yeah,
again.
Google has one.
And
Right,
again,
right.
you should get ultimately a hex code, and it'll be 6 digits. I don't like this color picker as much because, well, yeah, this one is actually not. I think the W3 Schools color picker is easier to use. Let's see what this one looks like. So once you get your color that you like, you can plug it in pretty easily. I'm waiting for this color picker to load. I guess it's going to take a while. I'm assuming it's going to show up here. Oh well. So I'll go back to the first color picker. That one seemed to be fine. Oops, not that one. There's a Visibone one I like.
Visibone is, yeah.
Yeah, Visibone is a good outfit. I'm waiting for the page to load. Hello, come on, you can do it. There we go. You can do it, come on.
Hey, John?
Yeah. Somebody said, hey, John.
Gary, how limited is the English word entries? Do you know, is there like a set amount of them?
There are, and there are different tiers of them. In the very beginning of the web, the browsers only understood 16 different English words for colors, which was based on the original CGA color graphics adapters that came out with 16 possible colors in the 80s. Woo! We could have 16 colors in the 80s. And then they grew from that. So now there's probably dozens or maybe 100 or 200 different English words that browsers will recognize. If you go to W3 Schools, or if you just Google English color words for web design or something, you'll get a list of them. But generally speaking, the safest thing to do, because all browsers understand hex code. So even the old browsers will. So if you want to do something that's universally understood by all the web browsers out there, you would probably want to use the hexadecimal code. And unless you're using a very limited number of the red, green, blue, black, white, if you're going beyond that, really small set of 8 or 10 words that all the browsers understand, you want to use the hex code.
Yeah, it's not going to take any pretentious names like sandalwood.
Yeah, some browsers will get that and some won't. So that's a browser. But here I'm on the Visibone color. I'm in the Visibone color picker. And so you see the 6-digit code. Now, when you use that, like, for example, this, let's say I click on that kind of magenta-ish color, light, hard magenta. Light, hard magenta. That's an interesting way to describe it. But the real thing I want here is the FF33FF. Again, the red, green, blue pairs. So that's 100% red, 100% blue, and then a moderate amount of green, right? So that's how you FF33FF. So if I wanted that magenta color, which is FF33FF, what I would do here, where's that style? I'm looking for, there it is. I would replace that there. Now, you always have the pound sign in the code. So, but if I were to say FF33FF, and capitals don't matter, it's not case sensitive. That's saying I want to make this magenta color. Now, I have to save that change to my text document first. Then I have to go back to the browser and I have to reload the page so it rereads it. And then the color has changed to a magenta. See that?
So you go in and you change it to magenta and the style to, you have to go edit your.
So that's where I would change the color of the type.
Then go down to the paragraph and type in magenta instead of red.
Well, the paragraph is picking up this style, so that's where I would change it. Because the paragraph just says to use style 2.
So that the text colored.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about, yes. I didn't, okay, duh. I'm looking at, see, I'm so focused on the code, I'm not looking at the.
Yeah, well,
so I would say here a magenta. Yeah, exactly. So sorry. Thank you, Beth. So you need to make 2 changes. You need to change the code, and then appropriately, you need to describe that color so that it doesn't say this is red when it's not. So now I need to, again, save my change and again, reload the page to see the change reflected. And now it uses the word magenta, and I'm seeing magenta. Thank you, Beth. you know, just for fun here, if I wanted to change the font, I could say Times, another boring font, and I could save that and then reload that, and then that paragraph would be in Times, even though it says it's Verdana. So then I would go back down here and change that to Times, you see. So you want to make sure that whatever change you make is reflected also in the content. And then, of course, it says it's a sans serif font, so I want to change that too, because I've blown the whole thing by changing it from Verdana to Times, so it's probably not the best change to make. It might have been better to change it to another sans serif font, so I'm going to go back and not change that.
Public stands.
Okay. So that's a very basic look at some coding.
What they want to do is they want to change the Adobe to Apple, and
right, so here. So now let's talk about links. So this is what we call an anchor. And you see it starts with an A and it ends with a /A. You see the block of text that I have highlighted. An anchor is a name for a link in HTML, what's called a hypertext link. And because it's anchoring the link to the page. And here, this just is a fancy way of saying that that is the address of the page. The hypertext reference is this URL, which is http://www.adobe.com. So right off the bat, in 99 cases out of 100, you can eliminate the www. It is a bit redundant. It's like saying my number is telephone number 458 blah blah blah. It's not necessary these days, but a lot of people still put the www in, even though most of the time you can omit it. So I'm going to omit that. I'm going to save the change. I'm going to go back here and reload the page, and you will see that the link still works without the www. So now if you want to change that to another site,
Apple.
So you can probably guess that apple.com is Apple's address. Now, if you didn't know the address you wanted, you could literally just go to do a little search on I don't know. I'm going to search on dogs, and oops, I didn't delete what was there before. Dogs. And let's say I wanted to link to a certain web page like this one, a list of dog breeds, I don't know. You would go to that page, and then you can copy the URL from the browser window up here. So I'm on petfinder.com. So I could literally copy this right here and paste it right here inside the quotation marks. And the quotation marks indicate the beginning and the ending of the address. So I could paste that there. And again, save my code. Go back here and reload the change.
Probably at the same time you'd want to put dogs in the...
Yeah, I see it says go to Adobe's page. Yeah. So yeah, well, let's go to Pet Finder. And I'm going to save that change. And you can always reload the page by dragging the file into the browser window, by the way, which is what I did to reload the page. And now I go to Pet Finder. So you can do the same thing, for example, with Apple. And again, or maybe this color picker. Here we go. So here I'm going to copy that URL, which is the Visibone color picker. I copy that URL. I paste that in the quotation marks. Then I say, okay, this will go to Visibone's page. And I save that. And then I can reload it. And now I can click on it, and it will take me to a different page. So linking is pretty straightforward. You just need to know the URL or the web address of the page that you are linking to, and you put it in these quotation marks here, and then you can actually, the link will work, but you should also change what you're saying it's linking to, just like when you change the color, you should say what the color is here, or if you happen to change the text, you should change it there. And if it's serif or sans serif, you might want to change that as well. Now, normally your first headline, by the way, would be an H1. You would start with an H1. So if I save that, you will now notice that it gets bigger because it's an H1 as opposed to an H4. An H4 is generally the same size as body
You're not
text.
supposed to see H1 up there.
Well, you're just indicating, you're telling somebody it's an H1. So I'm just going to take that out. If I save that, then that will go away.
So this is what everybody here is supposed to do. This is the activity. It's going in and modifying what the content is in the file that you have. So again, we need to make that file accessible with this.html. And where did we put that?
So yeah, let me summarize that. So you're going to start with a file, right? Now, if that file does not say .html when you start with it, it needs to. So you'll start with a file. Maybe this file you started was with the old RTF file, or maybe it was with a file that ends in .txt. But at any rate, it needs to be .html to be looked at as a web page. And so what you would do is make sure that you are saving it as text only. So even if you open it up in Word, the first thing you would do is save as text only, and then you would get out of Word. Because if you try to edit these files in Word, Word will actually understand that it's a web page and will start to add its own code to it to make it, quote, easier for you. But that's not what you want for this exercise. So you do not want to do this in Word. You want to do it in Text Wrangler or BBEdit or Brackets or Notepad++, or even Notepad, if you're on Windows, those kind of, any text program will work, but you do not want to use a word processing program. And you want to save it as a .html extension when you name the file. And again, it has to be a text file, but it has to be a text file with a .html name on it. Yeah, Gary.
Can we assign other classes and have fun with it, or just keep it just as it is and do the basic tweaks you mentioned?
Well, I can't speak for other classes. Just for this class, you can just do the basics.
Okay, just the basics. Got
Yeah, this is just an introduction so that people in here who have maybe seen this for the first time can actually change the code and personalize it and change the color and the link and just go in and see what it feels like to do that.
Sounds good.
So
That's the activity.
So your process, so your workflow is this. You start with the file. Again, it has to be saved as a text-only file. If you're starting with a text-only file, like the .html file here, you're good there. If you had that RTF file, you would need to open that up and save it as text only. Then it needs to have a .html file name extension. At that point, any text editor is good for editing. And my recommendation to all my classes is always you make one change at a time. If this is new to you and you go and you change this and that and the other thing, and then you try to make it work and it's broken, you don't know where your mistake is. So if you change one thing at a time and then look at it in a web browser, and then if it's working right, then you make another change and then you look at it again, then you'll be able to go back and undo the change you did and not break it. But if you do a bunch of changes and then you save it and then you notice things are broken, you're really at a loss as to how to fix it. So the one change at a time, then you save, then you look at it in the web browser. Then you make another change and you save, and then you look at it in a web browser. So that's the process that you want to follow. So you're always making it one change at a time. You always then need to save it, because just by making the change doesn't do anything. You have to save it. Then you have to tell the browser to reload the page to reflect the changes. So you're working in both a text editor and a web browser. You're going back and forth between the two. And again, you can literally drag it right in to see it. Or you can refresh the browser. They do the same thing. The classic mistake is you make some change. You make a change, like I make that change, and then I go, oh, let me see that change, and nothing changes. And you're like, what? I made the change. There it is. Why am I not seeing the change? Because I forgot. Oh, I didn't save the document before I went to look at it in the browser. Common mistake. So you remember you going back and forth and you're saving each time. So that's it in a nutshell. What kind of questions?
Yeah, I had a question.
Uh-huh.
Do you know any programs that the Mac might have that I could use, or any programs I could download?
Yeah, I'm looking at one right now. This is called Brackets. It's a text editor. You see it's Brackets. It's free. It's a text editor, and you can just search on Brackets for Mac, download it, and it's free, and it works great. And I actually prefer Text Wrangler, but I'm not using Text Wrangler because it doesn't let me make the text this big in Zoom. It will crash. So, but that's generally what I work in. Now, Text Wrangler has been eclipsed. They've kind of discontinued it because they want you to buy BBEdit. So Text Wrangler is not something you can actually find anymore unless you have an old copy of it. If you have an old copy of Text Wrangler, keep it. It's a great program and it still works. But Brackets is one that you can download now. It's free, and that's what I'm using here, just because Text Wrangler isn't available anymore for download. And now on Windows, so on the Mac, you already have a program called Text Edit, but Text Edit by default wants to save as a .rtf, which means rich text format, which does basic formatting, and that won't work for the web. It's not a text-only file. Now you can use Text Edit, which you have with the Mac already, but every time you save, you have to do a special thing to save as text. Otherwise, it wants to save as .rtf, so that's kind of annoying. So you can download something like Brackets. On Windows, you have Notepad. And Notepad on Windows is a great text editor, but Notepad++, which is free and available for download for Windows, is much better than Notepad. And I would recommend something like Notepad++ for Windows. Gary's thumbs up on that. There are lots of programs for both Windows and Mac that are free that do this kind of stuff. So you can experiment with what you like. But this Brackets program is really easy. Notepad++ is easy. So, and they're free. Don't buy anything. They're free. Good question.
So the 2-point activity is changing the file and making it work. And then in our previous class, we put it in the faculty folder, but we'd be turning it in as what's the most efficient way, John, to turn it in?
Well, they can email it, or did the Canvas turn in? Is that working for you, Beth? I don't know if it always works. Gary, yeah, question.
Yeah, if I just turned it in chat right now, is that okay?
Actually, that goes away when we end the session, unless we download it from chat now. So
it's going to get. I'll go in and pick them up and add the grade to your activity, HTML activity in the roster in Canvas.
Okay. Yeah, it's in chat, but I'll email it to you guys too, or put it in Canvas, wherever you want it.
There's also a submission in Canvas that we get notified by for the Canvas when you, yeah, I haven't actually submitted anything to Canvas, but students do, and I get a message saying there's been a submission. But I just need to see your changed code that's apparent from the color.
Yep.
And you can change anything you want, but we don't have too much time to change things. We do have a break coming up right now.
I've had a more robust set of classes but then I backed them all off just to accommodate the simple, project that it is. because John's been teaching me all kinds of crazy stuff in DM60.
So yeah, for DM60 folks, this is
Yeah.
pretty basic. If you make the color change here, just remember to make the color change here, because I know Beth, and if you only do half of it, you're not going to get full credit. So if you change the color to green and this says, hey, this is magenta or red, that's not going to cut it. So make sure that you make the appropriate changes to these two places. Got it? Right, Beth?
Right. I
Yeah,
mean, it
got
should
it.
say what it should be. It should agree with what it shows.
Right.
It's showing magenta and it doesn't say that, then that's not going to be good.
Right. So this is an example of changing the code and changing the content so that they match. Mhm.
And the other thing you could change is it could be a serif type, and you could put times in there, or it could be a link to someplace else. The grade is for just getting in and making the change and having it come out on the page.
Right.
When
So,
you
and if
get
you
into the
make,
browser.
and just to continue in the same vein, if you change the URL link, obviously you need to change the description of it. Just as if you change the color, you need to change the description of it. And if you change the font, you need to change the description of it. And if you go from serif to sans serif, you need to make sure that that's accurate as well, and so forth. Got it? It's 1:19. We're a couple minutes overdue for break. This might be a good time to do it. What do you think?
Break and come back and do the activity, and then we're going to go look at linking.
All righty. Folks, let's take 10.